there is actually a lot of emotion also that is attached to commercial. What's going on in the economy? What's going on? They're making these decisions off of sometimes how they're feeling.
Welcome, everyone, to the Closing Table Podcast, real accounts from real estate professionals, brought to you by WindowStill. I'm your host, Kat Schooler, and today I'm sitting down with real estate agent Brent Line. Brent is with KW Commercial out in Gainesville, Florida, and today we talk all things commercial real estate. Brent walks us through the differences between commercial and residential real estate, some of his most challenging and rewarding transactions, and Brent hits on the biggest myth of commercial real estate and how there might be more emotions at play in this industry than you think. So, without further ado, let's chat with Brent. Brent, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to sit down and talk with you. I would love to get started with how you started in real estate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So I started real estate just about 4 years ago. I moved from Southern California to Florida, Gainesville, where I'm at now, and it was a career path change. So I had sold a business and got done with what we were doing in California, moved to Florida, and started my real estate journey. I knew that it was something that I kind of always wanted to do. So it was just a really good time through COVID and a good transition for me. So yeah, moved to Florida, got my real estate license, and think I stuck around the residential world for about 3 months. Sold one home and then realized that this was not the right path and jumped over to the commercial side very quickly. So my whole entire career thus far has been in the commercial world, I would say.
So, what was it about commercial that piqued your interest more than residential?
Two things. One, I sold the house when I first got in, and the experience was so. I didn't feel very fulfilled through it. There was a lot of ups and downs that I guess I just don't resonate with families moving in. And although it was great, it went smoothly, it was a great transaction. I don't know, there was something missing. And then, funny enough, my very first listing I ever got was a referral from a broker from California over here to Florida, and it was a commercial property. And it was a pretty big listing for me for my first one. And so I took it and started down that road and realized, okay, this is what I really like. I love talking to other entrepreneurs, business people, investors. I find that communicating with them just comes natural to me. And also moving to Florida with absolutely knowing no one. So starting fresh, I find myself visiting the same places. I'm a small talk type of person. I love meeting new people, but it's like wherever I'm at, it's a grocery store or a gas station or something. I'm talking to the business owners, I'm getting to know them. And that's kind of where it all, started from.
Interesting. It's kind of like when I hear you describe it that way, commercial real estate seems maybe a little more like analytical.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that, the misconception I think a lot of people have with between commercial and residential is that residential has all of these emotions attached to it. This is a huge purchase for their family, and there's a lot of things that go into it. Whereas in commercial, there's a little bit less emotion. This is a transactional purchase. If the numbers make sense and the right time for them, most people will transact, and it's a lot of just buying, selling, leasing. They're trying to operate their everyday. Now, what I mean by misconception is there is actually a lot of emotion also that is attached to commercial. What's going on in the economy? What's going on? They're making these decisions off of sometimes how they're feeling. So I like to bridge that gap a little bit because a lot of people think that there is no emotion in commercial, and there really is. When you're talking to your clients, they are making financial investments based off of numbers and a little bit of how they're feeling that day.
Certainly. And two, if you're like a business owner looking for a brick and mortar, I mean, your business is your baby, right? It's very personal. It's something that you've built. And so, as much as like it would be like the numbers and location and like foot traffic and all of these things are probably things that brick and mortar business owners are considering, there is it's a piece of your heart.
Yeah, it's interesting. This morning I was helping a client out. She's a small business owner, esthetician, and we've been looking for another spot for her that's a little bit larger. She's been growing. And so I'm showing her this property this morning, doing our tour through it, and I'm driving back to my office and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, I feel like this was just kind of like a residential thing. Like she had so much to say emotionally about this property because it has to do with her entire livelihood. And I'll say I don't focus too much on tenant rep in commercial real estate. I'm very much listing heavy sales and purchasing and selling with investors. So I don't do a lot of tenant rep, and I think I had that emotion driving back to my office. I'm like, okay, although she's a really close friend, love her to death, she does great business. It wasn't my favorite thing to do because there was all of these, little emotional ties into this building. I'm like, well, this is pretty easy to fix. This is if this building, the square footage, location, traffic counts, everything fits perfectly for you. Let's take the rest of this out. We can get past that. So it was just an interesting thought that I had driving here. I was like, that was very much of to me, residential, morning.
So when you're working with clients, because it is, we've kind of been talking about the difference between residential and commercial, how is there a different approach when you're working with your commercial clients than someone might have for a residential client?
There's probably a little bit different approach that I have. I have, I would say, a smaller clientele base than a normal residential agent would have, right? They're transacting quite a few times throughout the year. So the way that they're communicating with their clients is, drip campaigns or whatever. I mean, I would think it'd be very difficult to stay very close personal with all of my clients on that such of a large scale and like the residential, where I've got a handful of very solid investors, people that, are close to me because they are my bread and butter. They are the ones that put food on my table. And it's a lot of purchasing a building, selling a building, purchasing a building, selling a building. And they're doing multiple transactions each, but I could maybe only work with, 10 people. So it's a lot easier for me to be really personable with them and have this really close relationship because they do rely on me to help them and advise them on some, strategic moves for their portfolios.
So are you mainly working with investors in this scenario then?
Yeah, I would say 90% of my book of business are investors buying, selling, doing 1031s. Like I said, I do have a bit of a book of business with small business owners that we still help and service. I've got a junior agent that works under me, and she handles 90% of all of the tenant rep stuff. It's a very good way to start your commercial side because you get to learn a lot about local laws, building departments, all of those things, permitting, all of those things come into play when you're doing a lot of leasing. And does this business fit in the right building? So there's a lot of stuff that I think is very beneficial going through that process. So I have a junior agent that does that. And then I really focus strictly on my main close investors and bringing on new business as well, but buying and selling with my core investor group.
So with anybody who's maybe done a lot of residential and wants to break into the commercial side, would you recommend then that they start with tenant representation and then build out that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an easier transition, probably. The biggest thing about transitioning from residential to commercial is understanding that it takes time. This is not an overnight deal. We're not doing transactions every single month. I would love to be, but the transaction I'm wrapping up right now, I've been working on for 18 months. So there's a massive difference. So you have to be able to financially sustain yourself as well. And in tenant rep side, you can roll over financially and get cash flow relatively quick because, your main job is sourcing. If you're being a tenant rep, you're finding a building for them, making sure it works. You're calling the city. If everything checks out, then you're getting them placed in a lease. As soon as that lease is signed, you get paid. So you can do a lot more transactions, although because, they're a lot smaller. Sometimes they're really large. Don't get me wrong, but for the most part, a lot of small businesses, they're signing, 3 to 5 year leases. They're not extremely extravagant price point leases, and you can roll through those, relatively quick, and you can keep cash flow going. And it's a great way to understand what commercial real estate is. And then once you start doing that, taking on, listings and starting to work with investors, and then I think that's also been the next step.
Can you think of a particularly rewarding, transaction or maybe a challenging one that you learned a lot from?
Yeah. Rewarding one, I would say most recently, there was a building that's been on the market for over a year. It had just expired from another broker, and I was able to come behind and pick it up. And I was able to have this hard conversation with the current seller. He was pretty overpriced, and that's why I don't think it sold. It's a vacant building, but where it was located was fantastic, but he was overpriced. So I was able to have this hard conversation with him and say, look, you're in a situation that you do need to get out. So this is where, if you want to short sell and get this thing done quick, this is where we need to be. Now, I understand that the value of this property is greater than this, but if you're not willing to sit and wait for that, this is where the price point we need to sell. And this is, going to solve all the problems that you're looking for and get out. So he did. We signed the listing agreement. Within 2 weeks, I brought the buyer to the table, paid cash. It was $1 million for one of my investors, paid cash, no inspection, very quick, helped the seller get out of a really tough situation he was sitting in. And then as soon as that closed, I then put the building back on the market for the investors and brought in another group that needed the property for a redevelopment, and was able to help my investors that got this gentleman out of this situation and gain them almost 600,000 in 90 days.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was like a really cool, I feel like all the stars aligned on it. It doesn't have, that does not happen all the time, but we were able to have a win-win for everyone. He was able to get out. He couldn't wait to get that higher ticket. I had guys that were willing to wait, and miraculously they didn't have to wait, but they were prepared to. They were prepared to sit and hold and find the right developer to come in and do the project that needs to happen. And it just so happened that it was just one after another. And that was, I think, the most rewarding, because they were, they gambled on $1 million and had a $600,000 profit in, 90, 120 days at the most, or something, from start to finish. So that was pretty cool.
That is super cool.
Yeah. A challenging one, I would say, is the one that I'm working on right now. That's been on the market for 18 months. It's a 30,000 square foot Class A office. I got hired to sell it, and we put the property on the market. There was a tenant in there with a 10-year lease. And the second I brought a buyer, same thing. Everything checked out really good. So I took this listing, brought a buyer to the table on a fantastic, like $7.5 million sale. Went to the bank, found out the tenant that was in there has gone through some financial troubles, and the banks wouldn't loan to him yet. So the tenant that was in there had filed bankruptcy. And so that just completely just demolishes anybody to get financing. So over the last 18 months, we've had to work on how are we going to get someone in there. Now this essentially is a vacant building, and that big of square footage is just extremely challenging. But we were able to find a tenant, and he's doing a 6-month short-term lease that's going to convert into a sell. So he is an end user on it. And so 18 months later, we finally have turned the page on this property, and I'm really excited for the client on this one, because this was another one that he bought this building for a friend, basically, to help him to grow the business, and it just didn't work out. And so now, he's going to be able to reap the benefits.
Both of these stories kind of highlight the thing that I think a lot of people who aren't in real estate day in, day out might forget, is that like everybody has a different motivation to sell. So, on the first story, you mentioned that first person, they needed to get out. They just needed to stop losing money on it, and they needed to stop the bleeding, right? And just get what they could get and walk away. Whereas the next person who purchased it had a cushion, right, where they could hold on to it until it appreciated, or until, it found the the right buyer who was willing to pay extra for it. And kind of same, with this 18-month story, sometimes you can wait 18 months and sometimes you can't.
Yeah, and it's very true. Even on my side, it's like, am I doing enough all the time? Why isn't this thing selling? Are we priced wrong? And everything seemed right. It was just a matter of moving some parts that after about 12 months we figured out, okay, we needed to get somebody moved out of there. That was, kind of red flags for people wanting to come into the building. So there was just little things that, even myself, I just didn't see immediately. And luckily the client that owns the building hung tight and even went through a couple re-signing of listing agreements so that we could keep extending to get the job done. But we were definitely at the brink point of was I going to be able to keep this one alive or not? Sure enough, we were able to do it. So it's just a cool thing. I love to be able to see the end results and actually see that facial expression or just the gratitude that they end up getting, right? Because there was a lot of hard conversations in that 18 months. I think I got fired probably twice during that 18 months. And not necessarily for anything that I was or wasn't doing, but, emotions, like I said, get high. There's emotion attached to this building. He's losing $1,000 a month. I don't care who you are. The emotion's going to drive up. So we would have months that he was in a really good mood, and we would have months that mood was not so great. And I was, unfortunately, sometimes the blunt of that downward spiral. But we were able to keep it all together, and now we're moving forward in a really good positive to start, Q1 of next year closing, and it'll be really good.
That's so awesome. I'm curious about kind of a little more on like your side of these things. Like, how do you stay motivated? How do you continue to innovate like over, this kind of 18-month journey?
A lot of inner looking, reflecting. I mean, I think what's cool is I would say I am, early on in the millennial, I'm 39 years old, so I'm still following that millennial, but I am like Gen X. Like, grew up hardworking father and parents, and but still have that younger mentality. And so, how are we going to create, new ways to market the building rather than just putting pictures up? And then also having a younger junior agent that has helped too. That actually like started this. She actually brought someone to the table with her network. And then unfortunately that deal didn't work. But because of that deal, I was able to spark something to go back to another client. And it was like the light bulb went off. So it's just a matter of I feel like time and not stop talking about it, voicing, brainstorming, masterminding. What are we doing? Let's look at all angles and not just letting it sit on the market and just thinking that people are going to pull up the MLS or Prexy or LoopNet or whatever because they see it. So it's how do we keep having those conversations? And I think every single broker in my entire area was probably tired of me calling and going to their offices, meeting with them. What do you guys have? How can we get this sold? Let's work together, and being collaborative with everybody. I want to work with all the brokers and have great relationships because that's how deals get done and that's how deals get to the finish line.
I think that's such a testament to you. And I do think there is such power in talking to other people about your ideas and collaboratively problem solving, even if you're talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about, your problem. My husband is an electrical engineer, and oftentimes I'm his sounding board, and I know a little bit of electrical engineering. Like I sat in on one of his classes once in college, and I feel like I did pretty well on the pop quiz, okay? But not an engineer. But there's so often in him explaining things to me, he has these light bulb moments. And I imagine the same thing was happening for you as you're talking to these different brokers, as you're talking to your colleague, as you're just talking about it. Suddenly things are sparking for you.
Yeah, I think conversation is what happens. I can only look at my whiteboard or my computer screen every day. There's nothing changes on there. It's going out and actually having those conversations. Honestly, we have the tools to go online and look at properties But unless you're meeting with them, and what I find is, I'll set a meeting up with another brokerage and say, hey, I'm coming over to the office. I'm bringing all my deals. I'm bringing all my buyers. Let's sit at a round table and let's put everything on the table and let's start matching things up. Who do you have? What are you guys looking for? What do I have? Because eventually, during that time, you start thinking, oh, that person works perfect for here. But when you're just scrolling the computer and looking, it's not, I feel like for me, it just is like a blank stare. Like I'm not being creative behind it. I'm not getting fired up with other people in there and hearing needs that they have. They might say, oh, I've got this investor. We're looking for this type of square foot. He's got this business we're doing here. And then you're like, wait a minute. I know of a property that would be perfect for. And then you bring it together. So that's my favorite way to do it, is just being out there and talking with everybody and trying to solve a problem. I want to put people together and get them where they want to get, to the finish line. And I feel like if all the brokers and everybody did that, we would all be winning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a high tide raises all boats, right?
Yeah.
And by you going out there and advocating for your clients in this way, their clients are making deals and getting wins and getting what they want as well.
Yeah. And we're in a market, I would say, people always ask, oh, the market's so tough right now. Everything's so down. And I always say to them, I say, the market's only tough and down if that's what you think it is. The market's the market. We just have to figure out how to work inside this market. What can we do differently to adapt to the market? And that is getting out of your office, making phone calls every day, talking to people in person, changing the way we operate. And that's how we're doing it over here. And I think that's what's made such a big improvement and adjustment to us.
You said you've been in the industry for about 4 years now, and what an interesting time to be in real estate, right? What kind of shifts in the market have you seen over these 4 years, especially in commercial real estate where, we hear more so than ever, more people are working from home. I'm just curious kind of what you're seeing in the commercial market.
I think the biggest thing that I noticed from when I started to now is it's been a little bit more challenging to do standardized financing. I think that's probably been my biggest gap that I have to figure out. And there's plenty of people that are still willing to sell their property. They are looking to still get, premiums, especially in my market, for the property. And actually, there's still plenty of buyers out there willing to buy. But when you have something priced here and buyers are willing to pay that price, but the banks are saying, no, we can't do that, or we don't want to do that. Now we have to bridge that gap and figure out other ways around doing that. So that's where I've been doing a lot of creative financing, diving into a lot of this younger generation, younger than me. And I still feel like I'm mentally a teenager all the time. My wife will tell you that. But connecting with them and figuring out, okay, how are you guys getting deals done even on the residential side with the creative financing? How do we bridge that over to commercial and make it more of a standard? And whether it's owner financing or even sub two deals, like there's all kinds of ways that we can get done and everyone still gets what they want. And in commercial, what I like is most of the sellers are willing to do that because they're going to get the price point that they're still looking for. Most of the time, this isn't a property that they have to sell and they need to pull all that equity out. Yeah, maybe they're trying to do a 1031, but also, okay, I can become the bank. I can make money on this now. This might sound like a really good option over the next X amount of years until things level out or until the market, just kind of stabilizes a little bit. So they're interested. It's just about educating them on how this works, because a lot of, the commercial world, you have a lot more seasoned and older demographic when it comes to the clients that you work for, especially on the, property owner side. So it's educating them and saying, hey, this isn't some weird scam. I promise you, this is how this works, and being able to get them to be open-minded behind it. And once you can do that, then you can get deals done. And I would say I had a closing 2 days ago, and same thing. This property was on the market for over a year. I picked up the listing and had the conversation. We got the price point down to where they wanted to be or a little under, but I was able to negotiate the buyers actually helping pay my commission versus my seller. And they did an owner finance deal. Everyone was happy. We closed, and it was just, a unique situation. So that's how I feel a lot of these deals are getting done today.
It's really interesting that you bring up a lot of folks who are in the commercial real estate tend to be older. I mean, for obvious reasons, like you generally you build wealth over the course of your lifetime and things like that. But, when I talk to a lot of residential real estate agents as well, a lot of people sell their homes when they're, in their older years of life, whether they're downsizing or moving, to like in Michigan, we all move to Florida, when we get old. So whatever the case may be, kind of educating their clients as well on like, we should do video of your house, or like, this is how we should market, because things are so different. And some people say, kind of maybe that the real estate industry is a little slower to adopt these kind of modernizations. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's so cool to see it creeping in, to see all of these kind of creative ideas flowing in real estate.
I mean, look at the next generation that we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that owns, not everybody, but let's just say the general demographic that owns a lot of commercial real estate is in that over 50, 60 range. A lot of the commercial brokers are on the older side of it. Now, there's a new wave coming in over the last 5 years of, I would say my age and even younger, and between the 40 and, 45 age. And so what if we look now, the next wave of people that are going to be financially stable and buying it, we're looking at this young generation that is filled with money from social media, YouTube, influencers, things like that. Yes, they're all then creating big businesses, but it's that demographic. That's who we have to service now. Like that's who I'm looking to, because that's the next wave. That age group is going to take my career to retire. So this group is starting to phase out, and now I'm stuck in this middle, I feel. And so now I'm learning from the older generation, but I need to also learn from the younger generation, and how am I going to attract those clientele on the standard platforms of commercial real estate. And honestly, a lot of them aren't even probably really looking at commercial real estate. Some of them are if they're being, advised or no, but that's what I want to get to the position where saying, hey, all of you influencers, younger kids and athletes and things like that, this is a great opportunity for you to start picking up a lot of assets as things start transitioning from the generation that is, I don't want to use the word expiring, but like coming towards the end, and I think we're in a super interesting time right now. And that's why I'm so excited to be where I'm at today, because there's going to be a lot of transitioning happening over the next 10 years. And it's how do I capitalize on that and also be able to relate to, the age group of like my son, the TikTok and all of the social media stuff. So that's going to be the new wave of investors and clientele coming through.
It will be interesting for sure. And I guess I think we spend a lot of time, I don't want to say we spend a lot of time thinking about influencers, but I think we kind of do, because they're the new celebrities, right? In the 90s and early 2000s, we were like, celebrities, they're foolish. I think people have had that thought, and I think people kind of have that thought about influencers, but I mean, they're successful business people at the end of the day. How they do it, I mean, if they're dancing on the internet or, making funny sketches, teach their own, but they're successful business owners. And who, if they are, really preparing for their future, are diversifying their assets. And a great way to do that, of course, is real estate. And so, it seems like the marketing challenge then is like meeting them where they are, which is on social media.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm having to learn to adapt, and get better at. And I think that is majority of the commercial brokers. Like if you go through TikTok or Instagram and you look up real estate, residential agents have this down pat. Like they are so good at it. You can see it all over the place. It's just all over. But if you just type in like commercial, you can go on TikTok, which is one that I've been trying to use recently. And I can thumb through pretty much everybody in the commercial world within my 10. There's not that many people on there to do it. So it's wide open right now to be the person to come in there and capitalize on that market and start educating that demographic on how to buy, sell, invest into commercial real estate. So that's my biggest challenge and biggest goal coming into 2020. We talk about getting market share. Well, I want market share online, teaching and educating this younger generation into commercial real estate.
Yeah, and the door is wide open for you.
Yeah. We have, I'm part of, with KW Commercial, we also have a really special group. It's called KW Sports Entertainment. So Sports Entertainment is a local or a group that there's an agent basically in every state or multiple in every state, but one market center can have one sports entertainment, designated. So I'm the one here, which is in my local area. And that's a big opportunity that we're trying to branch off to help athletes, entertainers, college, now college athletes. I live in Gainesville, so we've got the Gators, and they're now making a lot of money for themselves through college and through their social media, and it's now legal for them to do. So now being able to guide and then have a safe space that they can come and have trusted advisors to help them. So that's kind of the next shift for KW Commercial. And, there's residential side of this too. So it's not just commercial, but being able to advise and help this, like I'm talking about younger generation, but even on the sports side of things to help them with the money that they have coming in, because football, baseball, a lot of the sports that they're, trying to get to the point to, they don't last forever. So if we can give them a plan to be successful after they're done with their sport, I think that's a really cool opportunity.
I think that's great too. It's something, I didn't think about much as a kid. I never really aspired to be an athlete. That just wasn't that wasn't my dream, and for good reason. But yeah, unfortunately you hear stories about, there have been famous athletes who that then when they retire from their career, they maybe didn't handle their money very well. And then, it's kind of like, oh, what's left? And I do think, especially college athletes and going on forward, they do need to be educated on how best to make this short window of time, this short window of huge success, last for a lifetime of wealth.
Yeah. And it's really close to my heart because, I come from a professional sports background in the action sports side of motocross. Southern California, that was the industry I was in my whole entire life. And unfortunately, I got to see some of my closest friends at that time who were making seven figures and were 20 years old, 19, 20, and they're making that kind of money. And unfortunately, today, a lot of them have nothing to show for it.
Mm.
And yeah, they've got parents and we have our parents to help guide, but most of the time they're not being shown what they should be doing with this money and how can they diversify their income coming in and, have a great life, right? You're making this kind of money, you're young, obviously, but let's take a little bit of this and let's start putting it to work instead of letting it just sit in the bank account and you just spending it when you need it. And so that's what KW Sports Entertainment is all about. And, their partner, we've got the NBA that's a partner with them. So any of the NBA athletes, managers, like that, they will come to KW Sports Entertainment for their athletes and inner networks to help guide them, whether it's commercial or residential purchases or investments.
Brent, what would you say are some of the habits and routines that you have that help keep you successful?
I'm very fortunate to be part of KW Commercial. With that, we've got a program that is through KW called Launch. And Launch is a massive team that has your back to take care of the 80% of your day. And I have to focus on my 20%. So my 20% looks like lead gen, bringing business in, client, relationships. Everything else part of the business, my marketing, my deal flow, signs, photos, everything you could think of that has to do with a listing or transaction. I've got a team behind me that takes care of all of that. As far as even email campaigns, keeping all my clients up to date on what's going on. So all I'm focused on is bringing business to the table. So I've time blocked my days. Normally, besides this, is from like 9 to 11 is lead generation. I've got an amazing mentor. She's the vice president of KW Commercial, Alicia Shepard. She runs a program called 7 in 90, which is how to build 7 figures in 90 days. I've taken this. It's the second time I've taken this program. And, her biggest thing is talking about 5 and 2, putting 5 leads into your pipeline and asking 2 people for business every single day. If you can do that consistently, day in and day out, you will build a pipeline of business that you will always be able to work on. And it sounds so simple, and the most simplest things are the hardest things. Not letting the rest of the day get away from you, or I don't say I don't have my hands in all the deals, because I do, but things pop up. It's like, no, this email can wait till noon or 1, and just being very strict with my time and compounding that over and over, day and day, and that's what brings the most success.
I think that's great advice. I think one of the hardest things about living in the modern age is that there are so many distractions, and especially with work, and as an agent, your phone number is out there, your email's out there, so people are, I assume, probably constantly calling, texting, emailing, and I think there's that deep part of our brain that's like, oh, something new, I have to, and I know for me personally, one of the things I've worked on this year for myself is finishing the task I started before doing another task. Even if it's an email that just takes a 2-second response, if I'm working on, outreach and things like that, or if I'm editing a podcast, I'm like, no, I'm going to finish this and then I'm going to answer that email that will take me 2 seconds to answer.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing. And I think it's also one of the hardest things to get used to, because we're so used to chasing that red balloon or that shiny thing in front of us, the next thing. And I think as a realtor, we have a tendency to do the FOMO, fear of missing out. If I don't answer this, my client's going to go somewhere else. That's not the case. If you have a good relationship with your clients, obviously, if I get a text message from a client and it's like, hey, it's an emergency, I need you to call me, I'll drop everything and do it. But it's okay to finish what you're doing and call them back in 20 or 30 minutes. They'll be okay 99.9% of the time. And I think that's been the biggest growth that I've had to do, because anybody that knows me, I am unfortunately a yes man. I don't know how to say no at all. So learning boundaries in my business, learning boundaries in my personal life, and not letting those two things cross. That's another thing why I like commercial real estate. I do work a pretty normal, 9 to 5-ish job. I've got 3 kids. My wife and I also are co-owners of a gym here in Gainesville. So this isn't the only thing. So I really have to prioritize everything. And so being efficient with my tasks is the number one thing. And efficiency wins every time. And I haven't had a client get happy to not answer my phone immediately. I do always answer my phone. And that's what, wins. Is it just might be, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. Or sometimes if it's someone really important, hey, I'm finishing a task, I'll get right back to you. And then that's how
I think that's a great way to operate. And I think some of these things come with trust, right? I think a lot of the buzzy words right now are scarcity mentality. And so then, constantly kind of distracting yourself so that you can be available is kind of that scarcity mentality versus, abundance. And I think that just comes with being able to trust yourself and trust that I can say to people, hey, I see you're calling, I'll give you a call back in 10 minutes, means that you trust yourself and you trust their trust in you.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, I've learned pretty quickly that they're okay with that. They always are. most of the time it's not an emergency. Actually, almost never is an emergency. It's real estate. There's no emergencies. That's a big thing that I've had to remind myself is, okay, if there's an emergency to anything that has to do with any one of my clients' buildings or anything, I don't know why you're calling me. There's nothing that I'm going to be able to do to fix this emergency. Call 911 or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it's just real estate. There is no emergencies there, and so getting that mindset and obviously we want to be efficient and attentive to our clients but that's our job. So if you're doing a good job and you're being professional and you're taking this career wholeheartedly, then you're not going to have those issues and people are going to enjoy working with you because you get things done in a timely manner.
Curious kind of what your schedule looks like because you mentioned commercial real estate's a little different. Would you say it's more akin to like a 9 to 5, because these investors, like this is like their business, so maybe they treat it more like a 9 to 5?
100%. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm married. I have 3 kids. So my wife and I split duties of taking the kids to school. I drop my son off at school. I come over to the office. I'm usually at my office by 8:45, 9 at the latest. I'm here in the office from 9 to 11 or noon, getting all my lead generation done. And then I leave the afternoon for appointments, deal working. So I might spend another hour or 2 in the office after doing my calls, working, making sure all the deals that I have on the table are where they need to be, or if I can push them forward a little bit. But like I said, I have an amazing team behind me too that does that. But I check in, oversee it. Is everything where it needs to be? Perfect. Then the rest of the afternoon is always booked for appointments. And then by the time I pick my son up from school every single day, he gets out at 3:40. I love that. And then I take him home, and I may have an hour or so of little work that has to be finished up, by 5. But by 5 o'clock, I'm not doing anything else. It's family time. Again, if someone calls me, it's like a close client of mine, or we're kind of working on something important, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to take the phone call. But I try to make it a point that if it's not something super important, it can wait till tomorrow.
Brent, I'm curious if there are any real estate myths that you would like to bust, maybe specifically about commercial real estate.
I think I kind of already talked about it. They say that commercial real estate, there's no emotion attached to it. That's a myth. There's definitely emotional connections to every real estate. It just may not be as apparent like in residential, but if you are having great conversations with your clients or prospecting, you're always going to find some sort of emotion, whether it's I have to do a 1031, I only have 30 days left until I can find this property. If I don't, then I'm paying all of these capital gain taxes on it. Okay, well, there's a little bit of emotion. We've got a little bit of a panic. Let's figure this out. So now we're going to lean on that. So there is emotions to it. If we're trying to sell a building and they need, their bottom line's here. Okay, well, there's emotion behind that. Are we going to be able to get them? Why are you needing that money? What are you going to be utilizing it for? So I think that's my biggest commercial myth, is that there's no emotion attached to commercial real estate, when there really is. It's just not as, in your face like residential.
I wonder if maybe there's I don't know, television shows or movies that kind of sell us a different bill of goods, right? That it's super transactional, or I don't know, maybe even some of these, real estate reality shows, right? That kind of just paint it in a certain light. But yeah, no, the people often they're trying to build generational wealth. They're trying to build an empire for the people they love, right? Not just to do it.
And I would say it is very transactional in commercial real estate, which is why I love it, because they're not coming to a building or something and saying, "Oh wow, this thing is hideous." They don't really care what it looks like. Obviously, okay, is there some value add? Can we add money to this building to give it some more value? Yeah, we're going to look into that. If it's a building that we're buying just as an investment and there's already tenants in it, whether it's a shopping center or something, okay, yeah, I mean, the building looks like it's in working order. What does the numbers look like? How much money is this going to bring in? What's the cap rate of this? Let's get down to business on that. I've already moved past the looks of this building. Whereas, like in residential, there's so much on aesthetics, and does it 3 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms, three, bathrooms? Is it going to fit my family? Like there's a lot of emotional attachment because this is a massive purchase for, a family. Whereas in commercial, this is strictly business transactional 9 out of 10 times. The only time, like I said, where it feels very residential to me is small business owners leasing little spots, or, there's a startup business company and they're very scared on, can they make this work? Are we getting too big of a place? Is it too small of a space? There's all of those questions that come in play. And that's the only time to me that it's very emotionally attached on, like I would correlate it to like a residential transaction.
Yeah, for sure. Brent, I'd love to talk about your CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
What made you want to start a gym? How's it going? Tell us the whole story.
I did not start this gym. I
Okay.
never had the want or need to own or buy a CrossFit gym. So I started my CrossFit journey back in 2016 in California. A little backstory behind it. I grew up, like I said, in the motocross industry, racing, within the whole, worked in the industry. And when I got married and we started having kids, unfortunately, I decided to let myself go to a complete opposite dimension of what I was growing up and, throughout my whole life. And one of the kids I used to teach, so I had a motocross school, and one of the kids I used to teach, his dad was a CrossFit Games athlete back in 2016, 17, in that era. And he looked at me one day, and we always stayed in contact. And he's like, "Dude, what happened?" I got myself over 300 pounds.
Mm.
So, and I said, "Well, I don't want to be around fitness. I had such a bad taste from all the years around the sport." And so he goes, "Hey, check out this CrossFit thing. I think you'll love it." So I went to a CrossFit gym by my house, and I just absolutely fell in love. There was a little bit of competition behind it. It gave that little sense from my racing background. And so I had a massive transformation then, and I started coaching at that gym after I had this big transformation. And so then when we moved to Gainesville, obviously the first thing I did is just look for a CrossFit gym. So I found the gym, started going there, and I was just a member there. And the owner at the time, her and her brother went through some little split up and things were going on. And so she had asked me, "Hey, I really need help. I don't have enough coaches. Would you mind coaching?" I said, "No." I told her, "I don't have the time for this." And then again, I said, "Okay, I'll coach one day. Like I'll help you out, a little bit." One thing turned into another. Then now I'm coaching a couple of mornings, and then she's wanted me more and more. And then probably a year after that, she said, "Hey, I'm getting married. I'm moving. I want you guys to buy this gym, take it over." So my wife and I kind of talked about it, and I was already kind of so invested into this gym now. I was a member there, and I was coaching there. And so, yeah, we made the jump, and we're going on 3 years, I think now, or no, just over 2 years of having this. And so since then, we've doubled the gym square footage, we've doubled the gym membership wise. And I no longer coach too much. I still love it, but we've got full staff. I've got 7 coaches on staff that are all amazing. And we've got a fantastic membership base. And yeah, it just keeps growing and just keeps, doing its thing. And we love it.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
My cousin is a CrossFitter, so I know a little bit about CrossFit, and it's intense.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's interesting. We have I would put 90% working professional membership base. Like a lot of people from the university come there, nurses and even some CEO, large, high up. But it's a pretty diverse working professional gym. So I don't have a lot of like young. We do have a kids program, which is awesome. We do, one of the coaches there hosts every Tuesday for all the homeschool kids. She does a weightlifting clinic for them, and they come every Tuesday. So it's part of their PE program. So we open the gym up for that, and they come and do that there. So that's really cool. And then, and yeah, it's just a really good group of people, and it's just been slowly just growing and growing and growing. And like I said, now we've got to the point where, I don't have to put so much time into the gym on coaching side, because for a while there, I was coaching 17 classes, 15 classes a week. That's 15 hours a week. Also building the commercial real estate division and business, and then trying to be a husband and a dad. And so there was like a solid 2 years or year and a half that it was like 7 days a week. We didn't do anything. It was really difficult on the family. And so it was definitely a big sacrifice early on. And now it's kind of started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's really rewarding to kind of see it kind of get to the point that it's at today.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're able to reap those rewards and kind of, have it be a little more automated rather than putting so much literal sweat into it.
Yeah.
It always makes sense when I talk to real estate agents who are also business owners, because you're all just natural entrepreneurs. And, it's so awesome to see, when an opportunity falls in your lap that you can pounce on it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but I wouldn't want it any other way. The kind of 9 to 5 job before, and it's just not how we want our family to be. I would rather, have these ups and downs and moments of like, what are we gonna do? But it's all on our shoulders. And I'm there for my family, and I'm there for my kids, and I've got 3 beautiful kids that I've been able to be a part, since they were basically born. A little bit early on, I had a job that took a lot of time away from me. But other than that, like, I've always been able to drop my girls off at school, pick my son up from school, be at all of their stuff, and that's what's most important. And then everything else just kind of falls in place. But when they say owning your own business is great, and commercial real estate or the gym or anything, it is fantastic, but it's 24/7, 7 days a week. I don't think people really understand that all the time. Like, yeah, we have our freedom. I can leave right now and go to my child's, doctor's appointment if I need to, or whatever. But you're making it up at some time somewhere. You are working all year long.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Brent, is there anything you are looking forward to for the rest of 2024? It doesn't have to be real estate related.
I'm looking forward to finishing the year off. I love the holiday season. This time of the year is our favorite. Halloween's one of the favorite times for the kids. And so just looking forward to that, spending some time with the family, and really just, business planning for 2025. I think that's a really exciting time to put your goals out. And my wife and I have some huge goals going into next year. So I'm looking forward to spending that time with her and trying to put it on paper and really map it out and see how far we can get through each one of those next year. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh, that's so exciting. Well, Brent, thank you so much for joining me today. Would you like to let people know how they can follow you, how they can work with you?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me at Brent Line at kwcommercial.com. You can find me on Instagram at Brent Line. TikTok, same thing, is at actually TikTok, I just changed it. It's at Brent Line CRE.
Gotcha.
So those are all my platforms. Same thing with LinkedIn at Brent Line. So any of those platforms you can find me. If you ever have any questions or want to know about commercial real estate, I'm always here to answer anybody's questions, and love meeting new people. You don't need to be in Florida.
That's great. We'll link all of those links in the show notes so people can find you with just a click. Brent, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Closing Table podcast brought to you by WindowStill. I'm your host, Kat Schooler. Please be sure you're following our podcast on Apple or Spotify. And if you're part of our YouTube audience, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're enjoying this podcast, please feel free to leave us a comment or review. It helps us find more amazing listeners like you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.